Hi y'all, welcome to Books Britannica. I'm Brittney. Why am I so weird?
It's Brittney, bitch.
Anyway, here's how you spell my name, because everyone writes it wrong and it drives me nuts. So number one, if I'm a little low on energy today, I'm fucking exhausted. I've been working like a dog and I'm very tired. Secondly, I decided to do some fun makeup today and the eyeliner is burning my eyeballs. It makes my eyeballs very tired feeling and I can't wait to take it the fuck off. Today, we're gonna talk about some queer book recommendations for you. Today, I'm gonna have 6 for you. There are plenty of others, but these are just 6 of some of my kind of top favorites, and each of them have that color on their cover or in the title, and it just kind of is gonna work for me because each one of them is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, or purple, and it just works. So you know what? I'm gonna only have 6, but there are like a bajillion others, and trust me, they're good. So number 1, Red, White, and Royal Blue. This book is an awesome recommendation because of the diverse group of people in this novel. It is not just queer representation, there's also cultural diversity in this novel, which I appreciate. However, I only gave this 3 stars. I had a lot of issues with this book personally, but those weren't around the representation, which I think is uber important, and I think that's one of the reasons why I would definitely recommend this book. So this is basically the author's reimagining of the 2016 US election where a woman becomes president, and now we are following her son a few years after, and she's going to get reelected or something, I think in 2020. I think that's what it's going for. And he basically has a thing for the Prince of England, and it's kind of a love story between the first son of America and the Prince of England named Henry coming together. I'm not gonna lie, this book was very funny and very witty and very bantery, and there were definitely some laugh out loud moments, but I also had trouble personally with the writing. Sometimes I would just get lost in what they were trying to say, and I just felt like it was way too long for what actually happened. And it's just too long for a romance novel for me in general, where I feel like not a lot of stuff happened for me. I feel like a lot of romance books are like that, but I also need to feel connected to the characters, and I just didn't do that for this book as well. But I'm still recommending it, okay? So number 1 of the things that I really enjoyed was there were some great sex scenes in this book. So number 1, just so you know, there are some semi-explicit sex scenes. It doesn't explicitly tell you this is not like a dirty romance novel, okay? But I had a hard time knowing who was who and who was doing what, because I feel like the writing just was not diverse enough in what was happening during the sex scene. So I honestly got kind of lost, and that was not the first time I got lost in this book because of the writing. I actually thought that someone was making a sexual comment to him was his mother, and I was very confused and stressed out for a good portion of this book. And then I realized, oh, that's not his mom. That's his ex-girlfriend. Cool. So we have a bisexual main character, by the way, and then a gay other main character. And I really enjoyed that. I think the representation was really good. Just had a hard time with the writing, but there are sex scenes in this, so definitely keep that in mind if you want to recommend it to a very young individual. I feel like this is still a 15, 16 plus book, but it's not gratuitous, so don't worry. Also, I felt like the chapters were way too long for me. I don't like chapters that are 30 pages long, especially when nothing's happening, and I'm having a hard time with the writing, so But anyway, there's my number 1 recommendation. Number 2, Autobiography. I actually have this book, but I don't feel like getting it right now, so you're gonna deal with the screenshot. So this book, I gave 5 stars. I really loved it. It was beautiful. We have a bisexual main character. Are we sensing a theme here? Yes. And he is after a gay other side character named Sebastian, and it's so cute. So Tanner basically moves to Utah with his family, and obviously Utah can be a very Mormon place to live, and Sebastian comes from a very Mormon family, and it's a heart-wrencher a little bit. So this is about Tanner and Sebastian falling in love, and basically they meet because Sebastian is the mentor of this writing class where you have to write a book in a whole semester, and Tanner has to write a book, and Sebastian helps to mentor him, and they fall in delicious love. I don't want to spoil anything else that happens. There are definitely some good points in this book, but I would totally recommend. I think it has great representation and it was so cute. My biggest gripe is Tanner's best friend Autumn. I feel like it's such like a side thought of a character. That was a little upsetting to me because I feel like that was such a good opportunity for like a strong friend. But alas, we did not get that. I probably cut it out, but I've yawned like 8 times already in this whole video. That's like a yawn a minute. I can't help it. Some days you're just so tired you just cannot stop yawning. And I think especially after like a long day, you just can't anymore. The next book is The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and I feel like no one really talks about this book anymore, but like this was so fucking iconic like 15 years ago, and 15 years ago. Wow, I feel really old. Anyway, I fell in love with this book a long time ago when I read it, and it's one of those books that still just stuck out to me because it was just so poignant of like the time. It's just so freaking good. This book really deals with like, you know, a lot of trigger warnings like rape, abuse, molestation, suicide, depression. I think it's just so important for people to read it, but like, just so you know, like there are some heavy trigger warnings for this and there's good reasons why. Like, it's just, it's such a good book. I think if you would like a shorter version, you can watch the movie. It's currently on Netflix as far as I know, and it's delicious. I think it's another beautiful film. But I always think the book is still better getting into the characters' heads, and it's just one of those like chef's kiss books. This is basically a coming of age story about our main character Charlie and his life experiences, and I don't want to like ruin what happens later in the book, but obviously like he deals with like all of these themes of the trigger warnings, and he realizes a lot of stuff about his past that he's kind of like repressed. Like we find out more about this stuff later. It's just so powerful and so beautiful, and it also deals with like his like, you know, best friend like being gay and falling in love with someone who's like afraid to accept who he is, and it's just like an all-around like sad, bittersweet, feel-good story. And I think I love it because I just hate like just straight feel-good stories most of the time, and I like some bittersweet tragic bits. And in this, like I remember like actually crying. Like I'm not a big crier in books. It just depends on the book. Like sometimes I think you're just feeling emotional, but like this book has most people in their feels, and there's good reason for it. I would highly recommend this. I gave this 5 stars how many years ago? I think I'm gonna start rereading it again because it's just one of those books that just always hits me. I think sometimes we need those books to remind us of like our humanity, you know what I mean? Because sometimes I feel like we read so many books that are just full of garbage, and not in a bad way. It's just like some books just don't hit us in those feels, and you know what I'm talking about. Hitting us in those feels, I think, is why most of us like to read books, is I want to feel things, because I feel like sometimes in our average life, like we have so many different experiences that aren't good or are good, and sometimes we want to experience them through someone else's eyes, and sometimes I think that's how people can like work through their own problems, or sometimes it's just like nice to have a good cry. Like my mom always compares me to Brianna from Grace and Frankie as like a personality, and I don't particularly disagree with that. I feel like I'm more of like a Frankie mix with the Brianna, because I'm more like the hippie side of her as well, of the Frankie. But with Brianna, like she has like that one day a year where she has like her cry day and she like watch all the sad movies. Like I'm totally the same way, where like a couple times a year I like have to watch sad things or read sad things. Like I need like an outlet for emotions sometimes, because I'm not always good about dealing with them in the moment, and I just like put it in a box. I'm gonna deal with you later because I just gotta finish my work or whatever you gotta do. And it's one of those books that'll put you in those feels. The next book is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Now listen, the hype on this book was huge. I was expecting a lot, and it actually delivered a lot. This was another 5-star for me, and I was completely taken by surprise from this book. This book is just next level because you're reading it and you're interested, and I love learning about her life as like a movie star, but then I've never sobbed for an hour after a book, and I literally sobbed. Like I have never in my life ever cried as much as I cried in this book. It just hit me. I think I also, you know, I've had 3 grandparents die in the past year, like almost a year to the date, 3 in a whole year. And I think there are so many aspects of this book just tied into those feelings. I have never sobbed so much in my life. It was beautiful. So Evelyn Hugo is a bisexual main character, which is wonderful. And she basically tells her like coming of age story and her life story as to how she became a famous movie star and all her 7 husbands, what she's famous for, and how she was secretly like in love with a woman like the whole time. And it's so beautiful and so well done, and the ending, everything comes together in a way I never saw coming, and I literally just sobbed. Like, I kept reading and I was sobbing. I had to go back and reread a paragraph because I was just bawling my eyes out. Like, I just was not expecting it at all. I was house sitting at the time, and the animals were looking at me like I was an alien. Like, because I do not cry. So they were just like, what is going on with this woman? I don't want to tell you anything else about this book. I feel like you just need to go into most books kind of raw, just know like a little basis about them, and then just floor it. Just read it. It's one of those books I feel like is not actually overhyped. I feel like it's actually really good. And I think, even though it kind of is chick litty for some people, I just didn't read it that way. I just genuinely enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning about the story, and she felt like such a real character. And I think it's so hard to do a real character and have great plot aspects as well. I think that's why I had to give this 5 stars. Like, it deserved nothing less. Totally recommend this book. Like, if you're gonna read a modern love story, The next book is We Are the Ants, and I know this is many people's favorites here on YouTube as well, and I decided to read it because I love sci-fi, and I love me some queer fiction, and we have a gay man character, and basically he gets abducted by aliens, and they tell him he has like 144 days before the Earth ends, and he can press a button, and if he presses this button, he'll save the Earth, but if not, they're gonna explode. I really did want to see a little more aliens in this book, but it's so interesting, like, what happens in his life. It was just such, like, a human book. It was another, like, kind of perks of being a Wallflower book, but a lot of the other bad things happen to other characters around him as well. Like, in the beginning of this book, you find out that his boyfriend has killed himself, and then he has so many family issues, like, his grandmother has, like, Alzheimer's or dementia or something, and they're kind of broke, and they're always trying to, you know, keep the house together, and his brother gets his girlfriend pregnant, and it's just a whirlwind of a story. And I know it hit me, and it was so entertaining and so beautifully sad. And sometimes, like, you need to find the reason to live, and I think that was one of those books. You know, sometimes it's hard to find, like, a reason to live, and I think that's one of those books that really hits home for a lot of people. I would totally recommend this. I gave this 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend. You should just go do it. Just get in those feels, especially if you like aliens and slightly sci-fi mixed with like contemporary and young adult. I would totally do it. The next book is The Color Purple, and this is one of my personal favorites. This is technically a classic. I'm sure you've all heard of it or seen the 1985 movie, which was amazing. I freaking love this book / movie. It is one of those movies I always want to watch. I love rereading this book. It just hits me in the feels every time, and it's just so well written and so interesting, and you just connect yourself to the character. And I also love history pieces, so since obviously it's a historical drama, I love that. So if you didn't know, this is about Celie, and it's from her perspective as an African-American woman, and she's separated from her sister Nettie when they're pretty young, and Celie is like, I think she's like 14 when she has her dad's child, and she has like 2 kids by him, I believe. The story starts out really strong. Girl. Also, the story starts out with her writing being different. Like, you can tell her writing gets better as the book goes on because she learns. And I love that when that happens in books. Or like the opposite, like when I was reading the book, what was that called? Still Alice, that book about Alzheimer's, right? Her writing and her speech deteriorates as the book goes on because her Alzheimer's is getting worse. Like, I love when those things affect the narrative, and this is one of those books where it does that, where she, you know, starts out kind of illiterate, having a hard time writing, and she spells words wrong and stuff all the time. You kind of have to like really see what she's trying to say, and then the writing gets better. Oh God, it's so good. This book is written through like a series of letters from Celie to God, you know, like, dear God, like, why is this happening to me? This is what's going on in my life, blah, blah, blah. It's so powerful. And you basically, you know, Celie gets married to this horrible man, but he's in love with Shug Avery. And Shug Avery is like this jazz singer, and Celie falls in love with her too. And it's just slow and beautiful, and I don't know, I love this book. It's one of my favorite books of like all time. It's one of those ones I just love, and it just touches upon so many things. It's about like resilience and bravery and sexual and domestic abuse and like all the things that like women go through, like especially in that day and age. And it's just like a beautiful like LGBT feminist novel for me. And Black, like it's perfect. Like it's the perfect like Black feminist LGBT book to me. And I also love that it is historical, right? Like so it's set, you know, not of today's age. I feel like it's in the early 1900s. I can't remember off the top of my head, but this book is a go. Like if you're gonna read any of these books, I don't know, I feel like this one is just so important for so many different reasons. And I also just like love the characters, so just go ahead and read this, okay? The only two books out of this that are not young adult are The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and The Color Purple. I think technically, I wouldn't call The Color Purple a young adult novel. I mean, I know that she's pretty young when, you know, it kind of starts. I believe she's like literally 14, but I wouldn't call this young adult at all. So those are the only two on my list that are not young adult. So if you don't like young adult, definitely just read those two, because I know a lot of people just have an aversion to young adult, and I completely understand. Sometimes the writing can be slightly more juvenile. What is that accent? But I would just say to give these a go and just try them out. I think that the LGBTQIA plus representation in books can be kind of scarce sometimes, and I feel like it's really hard to find good characters that are portrayed correctly. And I think that there's so many issues I have with other books that I would prefer not to mention because I was upset by the representation. Personally, like I was personally low-key a little bit offended at some of them, and I was like, no, not including it, even though it's representation, doesn't always mean it's good representation. If you want any more recommendations for me for queer reads, just let me know. I have plenty. I've been trying to read more of them on purpose, especially for June. I have read a whole bunch of new ones. None of these ones I mentioned I have read this month. These are all older ones. I read a whole bunch of new beautiful Pride books for this month. Anyway, you beautiful people, I'm going to talk to you guys later. I am very tired, and you'll probably see me in my next video. Like, subscribe, do all that fun junk, and above all else, go read. Bye!